I'm Anna Saxenian, the Dean of the School of Information, and I'm really delighted to welcome you to today's panel discussion. It's so nice to see a panel of all women. Most of the events that I go to are less than 50%. So the title of this panel is Women Leaders in Tech, Shattering Ceilings and Scaling Cliffs. I want to start out by thanking Camille Crittenden and Jill Finlayson from the Women in Tech Initiative for co-sponsoring this event with us. So I'm nearing the end of a 15-year tenure as Dean at the School of Information, and I've been reflecting on how things have changed on the Berkeley campus. When I began as a dean in 2004, there was only one other female dean on the campus, Mary Ann Mason in the graduate division. Now there are 8 women deans, including the Dean of the Business School, newly named Dean of the Business School, the Dean of the College of Environmental Design, and of course the Dean of the College of Engineering, Sujay King. This is not an accident. UC Berkeley is continually looking at its diversity and inclusion efforts and trying to expand the representation of different groups in the institution. So I think we are, as a campus, making strides. I wouldn't say that we're there yet. I think we've got still a ways to go, and I think the conversation today is what more can we be doing? I have been also at the school level of the school, I've been thinking about diversity and inclusion in our master's programs, in our PhD program. And I have to say that I'm delighted that as far as we've come, this fall we have more than half of our PhD students will be women. Our MIMS program it's a technical program, but it has never dropped below 1/3 women over the last decade. And since fall 2018, it's been more than half women, so we're proud of that. The MIDS program, for those of you who are in the data science program, when we launched in 2014, only 20% of the students were women, and we're now up to 30%. Slow but steady progress, partly by launching a bridge course in Python, which has made it possible for a lot of different people to join, but disproportionately women. And also, we have some exceptional faculty leading our gender and tech and women in MIDS groups. So we are hoping to continue to accelerate our own progress. And last but not least, women comprise 38% of our faculty, which is higher than the campus ratio of 31%. Today, we're going to continue to move this conversation forward, listening to a number of remarkable women leaders in tech, including our own iSchool alumna, Holly Liu, from the MIMS class of 2003. But to get started, I'm going to welcome panel moderator Pratima Rao Gluckman to the stage. Pratima is an author of Nevertheless She Persisted, True Stories of Women Leaders in Tech. She's also engineering lead of blockchain at VMware, a company that's distinguished itself in gender equity, something we'll hear more about, I hope, today. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, Pratima.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having us. This is exciting. I'm actually really excited because I see a lot of men in the audience, so thank you. I wanted to just start off with my esteemed panel members here. Start off with just introducing yourselves and kind of telling us a story as to how you got to where you are today. So do you want to start, Telle?
Sure. So it's nice to see all of you. And it's really particularly pleasurable to be at Berkeley. Berkeley is an extraordinary campus. A man named Rich Newton was on the Anita Borg Institute for many years. And so he was passionate about starting Citrus. So it's really particularly nice for me to be here in the Citrus building. My name is Telle Whitney. I'm a computer scientist by background. And I worked at startups in Silicon Valley when it really was Silicon Valley, as in I worked on silicon. But 15 years ago, I took over the Anita Borg Institute and took it from a very early stage nonprofit with a passion of having women at the table creating technology to one of the leading global nonprofits in this space. Our best known program is the Grace Hopper Celebration, which last year had 22,000 people attending it. And I'm particularly excited to be here today.
Thank you for hosting us as well. My name is Pam Kostka. I am not technically degreed. I have an undergraduate in economics and an MBA. I came to Silicon Valley in 1995, just before the dot-com crush. Began my career in product management and moved up into the CEO chair, primarily through the marketing, sales, the go-to-market side and the product side of the house. Served as CEO 2 or 3 times, and then most recently, just on April 1st, not a joke, started as CEO of Allraise. And if you're not familiar with Allraise, we are a new nonprofit that is dedicated towards accelerating the success of female founders and funders. It was started just about a year ago by 34 female venture capitalists in Silicon Valley and on the East Coast. We have a pretty good presence, but we're still a seed stage. So in many ways, it is operationally in my wheelhouse to be at this early stage, but it's a little bit of a different change for me to now be in a nonprofit. But as I hit a milestone birthday last year, I really stepped back and thought, what do I want to do with the next 10 to 15 years of my career in Silicon Valley? And really was getting passionate, thanks in no small part to Pratima, about paying it forward. And so this is my way to continue to pay it forward and to make sure that for every generation coming forward, the tech ecosystem is a better, more friendly, diverse place, not just for women, but people of color, people of every age, so that we have diversity around the table guiding the development of the products that the population is using and that it's reflective of the population diversity characteristics.
Wow. That was hard to follow up. Never been a CEO, definitely not 3 times. So, my name is Amanda Blevins. I'm a chief technologist at VMware in the office of the CTO. Maybe this isn't as impressive to you, but I always had computers in my house because my dad was a PhD in electrical engineering, so since I was born, which was unfortunately many decades ago. And so when I went to school, I thought I wanted to be a geneticist. And I was also going to school on a soccer scholarship because it was expensive and my family couldn't afford it. So I had my first biology lab. I was just telling this story. We had to go in and count red blood cells on our microscope. And I was like, well, this is stupid. Why am I counting red blood cells? Like, isn't there, like, can't something else do this, right? And not me and not a human. So I quickly switched over to the School of Engineering, where the degree was, computer science or electrical or mechanical or civil. I'm like, well, computer science. I'm a terrible programmer. I do not like it. So I managed to get my way through, but my career ended as a goalkeeper with the injury, so I left school and went to work right before the dot-com bubble crashed or burst or whatever, collapsed or whatever terrible term. And so I was a server admin and a storage admin and a technical architect and an enterprise architect. So I like using other people's software and giving feedback on other people's software because I know what it should be doing to solve business problems and solve techie problems, but I can't necessarily make it do that. So I joined VMware about 9 years ago. I was a customer before that, and then they hired me as a sales engineer. So a sales engineer is the one that walks around with the salesperson and actually tells the customer the truth as to what the software does. So I did that for a few years, and I was promoted up to principal systems engineer. I was the first female principal systems engineer in the company. Thank you. And then our CTO, Ray, noticed that I have a lot of opinions, so he asked me to join the office of the CTO and bridge the gap between field and R&D, because in the field, engineers have one language, and R&D coders have a completely different language, and they don't translate at all. So that was my job, and I became the first female chief technologist at the company a couple of years ago. So I'm a generalist. I enjoy all technology, and I really like to help our customers set their vision and strategy with the solutions that we have and the partners that we work with. And then I work with our R&D groups to share that information for innovation roadmap.
So I'm Lily Chen. It's basically a great honor and pleasure to be here, right? Brought back a lot of great memory. Basically, I run the strategic transformation office at VMware. About 2.5 years ago, I switched from R&D world that I've been in R&D for a couple of decades. I'm not going to tell you my age. I'm forever 19. And basically I moved into the business world. And that was actually the advice from a lot of the VMware executive. Basically, it was a very big plunge into a very completely different world. So the Strategic Transformation Office does the strategic initiative end-to-end that are very impactful for the company. And it is a very unique positions where I can bring my R&D know-how and the business know-how and kind of see the hybridity of the two sides. I see the good, bad, and the ugly, and my job is just make them all kind of smooth together. And basically, my engineering background is very interesting. So the story to tell here is I basically have a lot of changes in my journey into the engineering world. My undergraduate is actually in foreign languages and literature. And I learned about programming on the 4th year of my university. Told my father that I want to transfer again. That's the 3rd time in my 4-year journey. And he said, no, I'm not paying for extra years. So you're just going to graduate and figure out what you're going to do. And basically, I graduated, couldn't find a job, and got exported at the request of my mom to my dad to United States, probably the best decision they ever made for me, right? And so I come to United States. I did not want to be in the literature world. And a lot of professors were really mad at me for that change, but that's okay. I moved into the journalism department in UW-Madison, but I never stepped into the door of journalism because what I wanted to do was to work with people because I enjoy that aspect of the interaction. And for literature major, you kind of don't have a whole lot of that. And I'm also way too logical based on my professors, so I don't express my emotion very well. So I figured journalism would be great, but then I figured out the journalism department on UW-Madison at that time was very theoretical. So I actually talked it over with the dean, and he was very supportive. He actually helped me to move to school. In retrospect, I feel I was so blessed because I was a foreign student. I came to this country on a different visa, right? So, but I was very fortunate and moved into the business school. And in business school, after about half a year, the most defining moment was my marketing professor. He tapped on my shoulder and said, look, I've been watching you. So what do you want to do when you grow up, right? And I basically said, well, I want to manage people. And he said, well, that's very good, but what type of people? And then I said, well, I don't know. And then he said, well, that's your problem. You need to figure out what field, what domain, and what type of people, because you need to get respect from them. If you don't speak their language, don't walk their walk, they're not going to follow you. So you're going to be a horrible leader. So with his help, I actually decided that I want to transfer to computer science. And so my dad stepped in and said, you know, I'm paying for 2 years, and you better move fast. And I did graduate within the 2-year constraint, right? And that's how I started my computer science journey. So I went through a lot of changes. So I do embrace changes in career aspiration and development. And that's something that I feel Pratima's book actually shares a lot of that, is that there are different types of glass ceilings, right? Including how you choose your career. At any definitive moment, I always believe that there is nothing definitive. It's only how you propel and progress at every step.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Holly. It's really, really great to be here. I'll probably tell you my story through first by telling about our company. And usually I like talking about the company story with our Series B. About 11 years ago now, we were supposed to get a Series B money in. We had all the term sheets signed and everything, and the day the money was supposed to be wired in was the day that Lehman Brothers had collapsed, along with Bear Stearns. Suffice to say, it was really crappy. We saw $3 billion contracts for revenue just disappear overnight. And we also, like there was just no more money coming in. We called them for about a whole week, and they said, you know what, we're just too scared. And I know this like seems like really old, but it was a scary time, 2008. And from that, we built Kabam. And some of you guys might know, we have a huge special ties to the campus. If you ever gone to a football game in the last couple of years, you probably would have seen our name on the field. 75% of our founding team is from Cal. Many of us have roots from Cal, and our CEO, he's the one who donated the Chew building. And it was really, I think, my story that's woven within that is really it's so special to be here. And Anno didn't pay me to say this, but a lot of my technical journey has started at Cal. It was really coming to Sims, and that time it was called Sims. It's called iSchool now. Because my background was very similar to you, Lily. I was mass communication, studying East Asian studies, and of all things, I was accounting major, and I just knew really quickly that we were not accounting. Like that just wasn't for me. And so when I came to Cal, I just fell in love with particularly user interface design, but really a lot of what was interdisciplinary. And it was really that foundation that enabled me to figure out these are all the things that you need to build a product in a company. And I was the one who later just ended up recruiting everybody from the founding team, pretty much. It was basically, I went to the CEO first. I was like, you know what? I know product really well. I know this, but I need a business person. And he was like, you know what? We need somebody who can build. I go, oh, I know just the person. I went to the back-end guy that I met at work, who happened to be from Cal. And he's like, I know back-end really well, but I need a front-end guy. I go, oh, I know just the guy. So I think that there is, I think that there was so many ways in the journey where it's similar to yours, where you can take these paths and you can certainly be in charge. So while I was at Kabam, we've done numerous pivots, and you can probably find more about our story online. I'm more than happy to share a lot, but it's 10, 11 years of a lot of twists and turns, with the Series B one probably being the largest one. And basically there, I've probably touched every single piece of the company. I'm probably one of the rare founders who have done that, all the way from a product to running a cross-functional engineering team, all the way to art, and then later running a lot of the people aspect of things. So being able to see the business from just a whole different types of lens all over the place. In 2017, we sold the company. Oh, sorry, Kabam makes games. I realize that. Like, maybe people don't know that, because oftentimes it's like, oh, people don't even know who really make The Hobbit. So we make games on the mobile phone. So if you have a little, I know this may be a more gendered comment, but if you do have a little boy in your life, they probably played one of our games. Marvel Contest of Champions has probably been one of our largest blockbuster longevity games. But we've built games for The Hobbit, Fast and Furious, and we've also done original IP called Kings of the Camelot. I know that sounds so dated, but it was really big at the time. And it really propelled so many things forward within the gaming world. That in fact in 2012, the business model that we had chosen to go down, which many of these other gaming companies were choosing to go down, really our game helped shatter the top grossing app and on iOS, and every single game after that does in-app purchases as a result of that, because I think they see just almost like movies went to TV, movies and TV. It was just a different type of audience, a different type of relationship and business model that you could build. So we ended up selling the company to a Korean company called Netmarble, as well as Fox Next. So the nicest thing about a gaming company is you can slice and dice, and I'm more than happy to go into detail on that. If you're interested in the gaming industry. And today I work at Y Combinator, where basically they're an early seed stage fund. They don't like to call themselves an accelerator. I've learned that, but the thing is I think they really coined the term. They like to call themselves as investors, and they invest in batches. They're the ones who found Twitch, Airbnb, Dropbox. They're the ones that have made their bets on technical co-founders, so they're really interested in that, and I'm there really, in all honesty. I've been kind of the only one, and we'll probably talk about this more in the journey, because I'm sure many of us have been I was the only woman on the founding team, and that takes its toll. And I want to see more female founders, and I was like, this is probably why Combinator has such a wide reach or well known among founders. Maybe if I go there, if there's something I could do to help over there. So we'll probably talk in more detail, but it's certainly impacted my journey and where I'm at today.
Yeah, so my connection to Cal is I married a hippie from Cal. That's my only connection. So when I started to write this book, I actually made this assumption that women were breaking glass ceilings. And when I interviewed a lot of these women, and 3 of them are here, Telle, Pam, and Lily are featured in my book. The last question of my interview was, is there a glass ceiling? And I was expecting them to say no. And they all were like, hell yes. Like, are you stupid? And the title of my book was going to be There's No Glass Ceiling. And they basically killed it for me. So I want to ask you, like, how do you define a glass ceiling, and who puts it there for us?
Well, the glass ceiling is typically thought of as you are moving up your career, you hit a plate, and it's hard to get past there. Having said that, you see glass ceilings in places where there's men and women, and more of the men go further up the ranks than the women. I mean, I've always worked in startups, and so I haven't been particularly aware of glass ceilings. I've just gone for it, and because we were small, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the glass ceiling. Having said that, you see it everywhere. I mean, you do. I've been preparing a talk, and my early days in VLSI, there was a man and a woman that's really were legendary in terms of creating this revolution, and the man got a lot more recognition than the woman. And it's really stark to go back and look at that. So the glass ceiling is definitely there, and I'm sure that many of you have seen it, and it's important to beat your head against it and to actually shatter it if you can.
Anyone else wants to take that?
So I can share my story. So I have a very unique mother. So when I grew up in Taiwan, I think Pratima mentioned my story in the book. When I graduated from, even though I was foreign languages and literature, but I graduated from the best university, like the top of the top, and the best department, right? And but the job I can find as a female in the island was 2 different jobs, and I was very bad for all of them. Nobody wanted me. One is actually being a secretary, right? The problem I never got a job for that is because I really don't take orders very well, and I express my opinions. Many thanks to my mom, right? And many thanks to my dad. They brought me up and raised me up and created a micro environment within our family so that I'm that unique female that they incubated. So as a result, I'm very unqualified for those positions. And I don't do shorthand. I'm a terrible typist. So you can get the idea. I flunk every interview and every test. The second job was actually, at that time, is truly airline stewardess, right? And that was the most amazing interview ever in my life. I did not say a single word. No question was asked to me. Basically, we kind of stood up, walk around on this stage, and that's it, right? And I'm relatively short, and I was born with a fat gene. So my mom actually took me to a baby contest when I was 1 month old. I compete against all 1-year-old, and I was the champion. And so basically, you get the notion, right? I'm not going to be hired. So basically, I remember this story, and I was like not very self-aware. I figured this is their loss, not mine, right? So no hard feeling and stuff like that. And I figured, okay, I'll figure out something, right? And then one night I went home, and in my room, I heard my mom and dad was arguing a lot. My mom is one of these ladies that's never shy of expressing her opinion. She has opinion about everything. So she basically was telling my dad, and she did her analysis and said, this country at this stage is a bad place for Lily. We need to ship her out to United States. And then my dad said, I made a huge investment on her, right? Because at that time, right, this is for all the men in the room. You will be dad one of these days, right? Or you will be brother one of these days. And so basically, the key thing for my dad's notion, he's a businessman all his life, and I'm very grateful to that because a lot of the business skill I have today in the job I've been doing, I kind of benefited from a lot of his coaching, right? And so I'm a firm believer on what parents impact to you, right? And what you do, you may not see it in your children today. Definitely, they carried it with them, right? And so basically my dad said, well, most of the women at that time, parents sent them to university so they actually look good in their resume so they can marry off to a well-to-do family, right? So my dad said, well, okay, I invested a lot on her, and you're suggesting I'm investing further. She said, yes, you need to send her to a graduate school. And so basically, of course, my mom win, right? So basically from my perspective, right, I was very unaware of any glass ceiling until like sometime in my career in a company. I was in this meeting for a long time with a lot of the executive, and during the break, one of the executive, he actually came to me. And he basically said, Lily, I need you when you go back into the room. Don't sit down and just start being yourself. Go back to the room and look at the room and tell me what you see. And so I look at the room and I ask him, so what do you want me to see? He said, you don't see it? This is a real problem. Did you notice you're the only female in the room? I said, whoa, yeah, that is very true. He said, have you ever been in any meeting where you are not the only female in the room? I said, well, I'm sure I can think of one. And I never came up with one. So that was the time where I realized it became my mission that I need to be basically a role model of some sort, right? Because if basically the other gender doesn't really see a role model or doesn't see is even possible to break this ceiling, like Telle was saying, then all bets are off. So basically, I feel like that is one of my missions. And so I think right now in the world, there are actually different kinds of glass ceiling, right? Because sometimes I think the glass ceiling is self-constructed, right? It doesn't mean other people will not grant you the opportunity because career is yours. And so you kind of determine that destiny. And destiny could be around you, but you have to be able to take that plunge to take the opportunity.
That's interesting. So then the glass ceiling should apply to men as well.
I believe so.
I think the glass ceiling applies not just to gender, but also race. I
Oh,
joke around.
also race,
Yeah,
yes.
as an Asian, we have a bamboo ceiling. We're like pandas in a zoo. We got the glass ceiling and the bamboo ceiling. So I certainly think like we are rare. I think whenever you're the only one and you're being treated differently, and you can't really quite put your finger. This is the biggest problem with being the only one. You can't quite put your finger on it. And so what happens is you start, well, I know this is the dangerous piece, is many people, minority of many women, will start internalizing it. And then they stop speaking up. And then it's like, oh, it's your problem that you're not speaking up. And then you just start just going inward a bit more. And that's very dangerous to like, even all the way to like, calling out the O-rings in a NASA like launch, all those things to where it's all these like subtle little cues. So I certainly think when you're different and you don't see a lot of you around the table, then that is something that the ceiling is almost shown by a little bit of its numbers. That's how it's kind of evidenced that you're just not going crazy.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the bamboo ceiling. That's interesting. As a woman of color, I've heard you have a concrete ceiling. So now I think I have I'm Asian as well, because Indians are Asians.
That's right.
I don't know why people don't think that, but Indians are Asian. So I have a concrete ceiling, a bamboo ceiling, and a glass ceiling.
Oh, yes. You're in a very sad.
Yes.
You're not in a
Very
well-kept
sad.
zoo.
I should change the cover of my book. So do any of you feel like you've shattered the glass ceiling? I mean, Amanda, you're like the first principal systems engineer at VMware.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you've shattered it?
So yeah, as the first female principal systems engineer, as the first female chief technologist at the company as well, which is cool but also terrible because I'm still the only female chief technologist at the company. I mean, there's only 12, but still, that's less than 10%. There are a few other women in the field that have become principal systems engineer and principal TAM, but there's like a total of 5 at this point in the entire company. There's 25,000 employees and there's thousands of people in the field. I was just promoted to senior director at the beginning of February, and I had to work my ass off to get that promotion. And it was hard. It was like a second job for me to build my brand and network and show everybody all the work that I do. And there are plenty of men in the company that are senior director and above that I know I do 5 times as much work as they do on a Monday, So I will not say that I've shattered a glass ceiling at all. I know that it's there, and I know how much work it takes to move to the next level. But if I shattered the glass ceiling, we would have equal representation of top technical talent, because it's not like they aren't there. It's just that nobody knows because, engineers as a habit are introverts. And engineers that have it don't know how to speak about themselves. But women in particular, if we're too loud, we're bossy or bitchy or whatever it might be, right? And then if we're too demure, then people just expect that. So in addition to that second job that I had about building my brand and everything else, the third job I have is to make sure before I say something, what does this sound like? Am I too much this? Am I too much that, right? So think of all the extra energy I am spending to get this done for me and for my company and for my family. And I'm like, if I could just do my job, look how much more I could provide. So it's certainly still there, and it's a daily battle.
I would agree that you never feel like you stop breaking through the ceiling. The higher I got in my career, the more I felt it, and the harder I had to work at it. And I think this is manifested by just the unconscious bias that happens when you are surrounded by a room full of men, and they have certain approaches and certain ways that they perceive things. You do have to work 5 times as much to prove yourself. And it is that you have, whether you're a woman, whether you're an underrepresented minority, you're always having to prove yourself in a way that maybe a white man does not have to prove themselves. They get kind of the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't matter if you're going for a board seat, if you're going for CEO, if you're going for VP, if you're going for director, it doesn't matter. There's just sort of a benefit of the doubt. And the best analogy I heard of this was someone saying, when boards get together and talk about adding a board seat, it kind of goes, well, how about Ted? Ted's a great guy. He's really fun to hang with. How about Joe? Yeah. Joe is like, he's great. You'll love hanging with him. Yeah. How about Pam? Well, what has Pam done? What are her qualifications? Tell me why she is suited to do this. So and it really is true, and it's exhausting, to your point, Amanda. It's exhausting because you're doing more of the job. In many ways, you're so overqualified for the position or job because you've worked so hard to prove yourself, to get the capabilities, and yet the person next to you who's got less qualifications might actually get the job. And that is exhausting, I think. And so you have to, and it's just every day you have to keep fighting and breaking through that glass ceiling. So I don't know that it's ever, when Pratima asked me that, I might have been the person who said, hell yeah, there's one. There's a glass ceiling, because it's just perpetually there. It never goes away. You reach the next level of your career and you find that there's more of the same that's coming to you. And part of why I took the job I did is I want to make that easier. I'm tired of having to work 5 times as much to earn less money. in technology, and we're suffering as a result of it as a society. Technology is so pervasive. It's touching our lives in so many ways that if we had more diversity around the table, we would be doing a better job. We might be seeing different problems. I'm not going to say we would be perfect world and tech would be perfect, but it would be better.
Yeah, so I heard, to break the glass ceiling, you have to create a brand, work hard, 5 times harder. But there are a lot of men in the room, and I feel like men can break these glass ceilings for us. So why do you think they should care? And do you believe that they can help break these glass ceilings for us?
Well, I have an interesting technology example of this. So when Apple first created their, I don't know if it's Apple Fit, I'm a Google ecosystem person, but whatever their health app was, they had like 100 different things that they measure, right? Like, what's my heart rate, what's my temperature, how many steps am I taking, what sport am I doing, am I exercising, all that kind of stuff. What is the one thing that they did not measure at launch?
Period.
Menstrual cycle. I don't know, maybe half the population in the world is interested in that. I mean, maybe 100% if you count like husbands and brothers and people that have to be around women during that time, right? So like what was missing? Probably a woman on the team, right? So if anybody's designing something, you have to think of how the other part of the world or somebody that doesn't look like you or think like you, what are they going to do with it? How are they going to use it? I mean, there's tons of studies about how seatbelts will actually are harmful to pregnant women, and all sorts of other things are ergonomically designed for this average white male. So whatever you're creating, whatever you're designing, whatever you're thinking about, somebody that doesn't look like you from a different race, a different country, a different culture, a different gender type, that's very, very important, because there's always some sort of design that you are missing, or some sort of use case that you are missing just because it doesn't even cross your mind.
So, I mean, the world's half men, half women, and most men I know prefer to be on teams where there's more women. It's just simply more fun. If the team's more diverse, you have very different ideas. The part where we struggle is that when you have teams that are predominantly men, the culture of those teams becomes something that's comfortable. And for most people on the team, that comfort level is for especially white men. And because of the Me Too movement and because of a lot of the coverage that's going on, many men are beginning to feel uncomfortable with, well, what am I doing here? How do I be more welcoming? And so right now, the most important conversation we need to have together is, what does this look like? When you say this is how I feel. What does it take for me to speak up when when you're one of just a few women at the table? So I believe that most men, given the chance, prefer to be in groups that are half men, half women, and very diverse.
Yeah, and Amanda, I like that thing about the health app. I mean, we put women on its space recently, and they didn't have spacesuits to actually do the spacewalk. And it's, 2019? God, yeah. So there's a concept of a glass cliff. So when a woman breaks through the glass ceiling, there's a glass cliff waiting for her. So I'd like one of you to talk about the glass cliff and just take that question, because a lot of people don't know what that is.
So if you don't know what a glass cliff is, a glass cliff is a woman or an underrepresented minority will often be given an opportunity, but it'll be a really shitty one, not to mince words. She will be given an almost impossible task. So examples of this, Marissa Mayer taking over Yahoo. Really difficult to turn around that organization. Theresa May trying to fix Brexit, or trying to figure out what Brexit is. Like, okay, we got it to the point, and then everybody stepped back and she stepped forward. And so the concept of the glass cliff is that the choicest opportunities are not being given to women or underrepresented minorities. The more difficult, the more challenging, partly because of biases that we assume about how a woman will deal with that. When a company is in crisis, some of the stereotypical female traits are going to help bring down the temperature and smooth things out for that company. So partly it is because of that, but a lot of it's just because we're not given the benefit of the doubt. The men get the choices, and the women step in and say, well, this is all that I can get. If I want to be a CEO, this is the opportunity that I will get. And so they take it, even though it's highly risky. The challenge with the glass cliff is the odds are stacked against you. The odds of success in a startup are stacked against you. Now take something that's on the fiery cliff down and say now you're going to turn that around. The odds are stacked against that. So what happens is that sometimes you pull it up and sometimes it crashes into the ground because the odds were against you. And so we as a society begin to get reinforced that women or underrepresented minorities aren't good leaders because look, their thing crashed and burned. And that is the problem. I think that more than anything is the problem, is that it reinforces the concept that women or underrepresented minorities aren't capable, and they are totally qualified and capable to do something.
One thing I just want to add, not necessarily to that story, what's Joy's last name that we heard yesterday morning?
Joy, I missed half her session. So
I forget her last name. So her Twitter handle is Jovial Joy. So she's a woman that got a degree at MIT, and she came and spoke to us at VMware yesterday during this conference about all the work that she's doing around facial recognition, and how it doesn't identify people of color and all these other bad things that happen with it, right? And so she's very into data, of course, because you must be, as many of you know, being data scientists. And the term underrepresented minority, because she had a lot of graphs and percentages and everything, she's like, actually, we are the undersampled majority. And I was like, oh, I like that. Because it's very true. People of color, women, everything, that's the majority in the world, right? And so I really like that approach. So just want to add on.
It's excellent.
So when I went back to your first question and I talked about how did you get to where you got today, and there was a constant theme in the book as well when I talked to these women, the men were very critical to the success of these women.
That's correct.
Very, very critical. And I want to bring that out because it is so important for men to realize that. All the male sponsors and the mentors you had, if you look at mentors and sponsors, the difference is mentors, they talk to you while sponsors talk about you. They're the ones who are advocating for you. They're kind of pulling you up in your career. A lot of these women have had men in their lives who helped them. So does anybody want to talk about that? And that's why I want to go back to that question is like, why should they care? Like, why do we need more men in the conversation? Anytime we talk about diversity and inclusion, men just run away. And I'm actually so honored that we have so many men in this room.
Yes.
It's getting better. As I go to these talks, I think we're seeing more men. And I really want to thank you for being here. But I just want to talk about how do we get men to this conversation? Because they're the key to our success, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, so I have several stories to share about that. So I have a lot of what I will call the lifetime mentors. And ironically, all of them are men. Mm-hmm. And I actually learned a lot of skills through the sponsorship and the mentorship and the coaching from these men. So for example, I actually, about more than a decade ago, if the room has more than 3 people, I went into this radio silent mode. I turn into a complete introvert. Not a single word I can speak. But if the room is less than 3, I am a chatterbox that nobody can get me to shut up about my opinion. So my boss at that time, very grateful to him, he's one of the mentors I got, he basically coached me out of that. So today I can stand on the stage, I can do a lot of these impromptu talk in real time. I think the seeding came from him, right? He's not one of my lifetime mentors, but I would say he helped me really to conquer this stage fright, right? Now, I already consider myself, like my parents always call me and some of my friends will call me, I'm basically the kind of a bulldog or a bull in the china shop. My mom or my dad always worry that in every occasion, how do I not break these glasses or the delicate things, right? So basically, I generally face that kind of a situation, but I have this weird dynamic situation where I think that was a very instrumental mentor I got. And I think the couple of sponsorship examples, and I've risen to this VP engineering role. I was very proud of myself, right? And basically, I'm not shy about expressing my opinion. And for people that are hardcore engineers in the room, you might share some of my old days opinion. I always believe a product manager does not know how to do product spec. Engineer can do a much better job. Marketing people do not understand our technology. They just don't know it, right? So I always look down about those professions. And so the general manager, one of my lifetime mentor, right? One day he called me into the room. It happened to have an opportunity. Our business unit was breaking into different sub-business unit, right? So he's looking for the kind of a general manager. So he called me into the room and he said, well, I'm gonna make you one of the general manager. I didn't ask for the job. And so I said, wow, that sounds really good. I like this title. So I get to be the boss, right? And stuff like that. And then he said, okay, so and so are going to report to you. And I was like taken back. I was the lead product manager and the lead product marketing manager. I really believe they were incompetent. I even made one of them cry at one point. So basically, so Vin told me, he said, I have only one ask of you. These are talents in product marketing and product management. Your job as a general manager is to motivate them and to retain them, help them to progress. I said, hell no. And then he said, wow, that's the skill you need to earn. And I'm going to watch you and I'm going to help you. So he hired a coach. They coached me like crazy and stuff like that. Gradually, I started learning that, okay, nowadays, I really respect product management and I really respect product marketing. They have a very equally tough job. So I learned this key thing of there are different aspects and perspective on a diamond, right? And it takes really multiple aspects to make that diamond happen for your product. So basically, if you shut off one of your ears to a critical dimension, then just one angle is never going to be that fascinating. So that was actually a very good experience I have, right? And also the reason I was basically foreign language and literature is I hate math ever since I was a kid. And I can never do the numbers right. My dad is actually great in that, so I just never got that part of his gene. And the second one is actually a CFO. He came in and run our division, and he basically called me into the room, and he said, I'm gonna make you my right-hand person, right? So that's where I learned all about the books, the P&L, gross margin, and all these kind of stuff, right? And he always very patient to coach me about that. And I will coach him on how engineer will feel about things. So I'm actually a firm believer in 50-50, right? When I basically move from different aspects of my career, I always look at, this is basically where I am going to let go of this part of the glass house I was in. I'm just gonna go enter the other one, right? And I believe that kind of a partnership across all the gender actually was very beneficial for me in my career.
So I'm glad you said, okay, go ahead, Telle.
I was going to say that almost all the mentors that I've had were men, because if you're working in the semiconductor field, the people who have what you want are going to be men. They're the people that I could, both mentors and sponsors, they're the people I could learn the most about. And it's been my experience that there are many men out there that really want you to succeed. But I have had also an aha moment, because in that time, there were a few women who worked in my organization, and without exception, they've now all come back to me. And so it was important to them to see a woman in a senior role. And so, 5 years later, 10 years later, they've come out of the woodwork. And in fact, I'm having coffee with one of them next week. So my experience is that men want to see great women succeed. Just like women want to see great men succeed. And so it's really finding great people to help you both as mentors and as sponsors. And I really believe it's important to help men understand how to be successful in that role.
Yeah, I think going off of that, every one of you in this room, particularly the men, are going to be working somewhere or start your own company. You're going to be wanting to either work with the very best or hire the very best. And if you are unconsciously limiting yourself to something else, I just don't think you're going to be discovering the best. And if you don't want to work for the best, you could hire the best and then go play something else. Take a vacation.
So we have 5 minutes, and there's this one thing I want to talk about. It's fairly depressing, and I know we'll end on a positive note. But, so every year, Fortune magazine, they release their Fortune 500 list of companies, and they rank these companies based on their prior year fiscal revenues. And what we found is in 2015, we had 24 women running these, female CEOs running these companies, 24 women. In 2016, that number dropped to 21. And in 2017, we had promising news. It went up to 32 women, and we went yay. So in terms of percentages, it went from 4.2 to 6.4%, right? So that's the rate of change we're seeing. And those 0.2 and 0.4 is very important to me because my editor, when I talked about this on my podcast, she said, just say 4 to 6%, Pratima. I was like, no, I think 4.2. That 0.2, the 0.4 is super important. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's this woman called Judith Warner. In 2014, she came out with this report, and she is she's the senior fellow at the Center of American Progress. And she documented that this rate of change that we're seeing, we won't see equality of men and women at the top until 2085.
Yeah.
2085. So that's 66 years from now. Actually, I'm great at math. And the youngest daughters, our youngest daughters today, will not see that in their lifetime. They'll see that in their 70s, right? My daughter is 5, and she won't see that until her 70s. And that realization really, really broke my heart, literally. And that was one of the reasons why I went off and wrote this book. And Carnegie Mellon University invited me last month to come and support an all-robotics team. And I went there. These women were building robots. I've never built a robot. I'm an engineer. I haven't built one. Shame on me. But these girls, high school kids, were building robots. They were designing it. They were doing the mechanical work. They were programming it. And I asked them, I said, why is it an all-girls team? And they said, the boys, if they pair them with boys, the boys will say girls can't use drills. Mm-hmm. And the guys are driving the robots while the women are organizing around the boys.
Yeah.
And that happens in the workforce.
Yeah.
So we need to stop that.
Yes.
With our girls.
Housework.
We need to stop that because I don't want to wait till 2085. I want 2025. And it really makes me mad, and it gets me emotional as well. And I launched a podcast called Getting to 50/50. It went out 2 weeks ago. And these are the conversations I have with the guests on my podcast, is how do we get to 50/50? And so that's my last question. I know we have 3 minutes, and I want to be a good moderator and stop on time. But how do we get to 50/50, Telle? I want 2025.
Well, what you measure, you will change. And the single most important thing that organizations can do is to look at where they are, figure out where they want to go, and figure out what is actually successful in creating that change. And there's many examples.
I agree that shining a light on the data, and there's lots of data out there now, is part one, because you can't unsee what you've seen. I do think that to all the men in the audience, you are going to have to help us make the change. Without you proactively making change and helping make change, it won't happen, because unfortunately men are the ones that are in the power dynamic right now, and you have an immense ability to have impact. Diversity and inclusion initiatives often get a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. And so if you're going to be a founder, because I suspect many of you are going to go out and do that, there's no time to start than the very first time when you start the company. The minute that you start to make your hires, make diversity and inclusion part of what you do, your company results will be better. But even if you say, okay, I'm just going to get my first 10, and number 11, I'll worry about it. It's already hard to break the dynamic that you've put in place. So start immediately. Take the extra 2 months to find a woman engineer or an underrepresented minority. They're out there. The pipeline fallacy is a fallacy. There are qualified people everywhere from a diverse perspective that you can access. From day one, put it into your mantra. There's also an initiative that Allraise has called Founders for Change, and that are people who have taken a pledge to put diversity into all factors of their organization. And the other one that you can do that can put pressure on the industry, and we're starting, I believe, to see the pressure coming, which is to say to the investment community, if I go to you and I see a bunch of white dudes around the table, I'm not taking your money. And that is a powerful greed motivator. Motivation through fear is bad. Motivation through greed is good. And it's a greed motivator. And we've seen 34 new women GPs in venture last year. We're trying to move that dial. It's hard, but a lot of women were added. Unfortunately, 71% of venture firms still don't even have a single female at the table, 71%. And of the remaining of those 29% that do have a female at the table, there's most of it, 75% in one. And so she still feels isolated. She still feels like she's not part of the group. So my request to everybody who wants to go into venture or to be a founder is to be proactive and aware and measure impact, not just intent, but the impact of your actions.
Yeah, I would say go with a modest goal, to go with non-zero. So one of the things that our CEO, Pat, has done is when we started a China joint venture, so we will appoint board members. So VMware actually appointed 3, and I was one of the board members. And that was a very deliberate decision. And basically, when we look at the dynamic 3 of us brought to the table, actually was a pretty good. We play a very good trio in terms of how to make the joint venture cover all the aspects, right? So if you strive for non-zero, then you bring the opinion on the table and you bring the perspective on the table. That's a hell lot better than 0. Because if 0, it will guarantee over time go to negative, right? Yeah. So I think if you always strive for non-zero, strive for the positive, and always net positive, then you always move another net positive, then I think the progress will be there.
I think you could start now. You should list your top 5 people that you go to in terms of like emergency or to advise you in your life, and see and then write down their race, write down their gender. How diversified is that for you? And if you are going to be living your life and living your career, you're going to start recruiting from these internal networks to start a company, to recruit them to join you at this company. If they all kind of look like you, then that's probably going to be what it's going to be in 2025. But you can change this now.
Yes.
I think the other point, I was reading this article a couple days ago where Harvard did this study around ranking teachers, students ranking teachers, which I think is odd. But so on a scale from 1 to 10, male teachers, professors, were the only ones that would get 10s, and women's would average like 6 or something like that. But when they reduced the scale from 1 to 6, a lot more women received that top ranking, because there's this idea that 10 is like rock star and perfect, and nobody used these terms for women. So what you measure is what you change, but also how you measure it and what you measure is important too. So think about, like, if I'm going to rank my top 5 people, well, what are my top 5 people about, and what are their skills, and what are they good at? And I'm sure everybody up here has lots of stories about how we had to learn all these soft skills that we weren't good at, right? And so you still need that, and your company still need that on your team. So be aware of what you're measuring, how you're measuring, and why you're measuring it.
That's awesome. And I'll end on a positive note. It's a great time to be alive.